I remember the day I stepped into the glass-walled office of Brightway Marketing in downtown Chicago. The air smelled of fresh coffee and ambition, a mix of caffeine and determination that seemed to linger in every hallway. I was 22, fresh out of college, eager to prove myself. The city felt like an open book, pages waiting to be filled with late-night adventures, career milestones, and, though I didn't know it yet, unexpected truths. Josh found me first. He was the kind of guy who made new hires feel like they belonged from day one. A few years older, effortlessly cool, he had that laid-back charm that made people gravitate toward him. He was the one who showed me where to find the best street tacos, which dive bars didn't check IDs too closely, and how to sneak out of boring office meetings without getting caught. We became inseparable. There were nights when we drank whiskey until the city blurred into neon streaks. We danced at underground clubs, took spontaneous road trips with no destination, and laughed until the sun came up. He had a way of making every moment feel like a scene from a movie. Loud, reckless, alive. But behind the easygoing grin, there was something else, a wound he never let fully heal. "She broke me, man," Josh admitted one night, the words slurred with alcohol, but heavy with something deeper. Just left. No reason, no explanation. Right before Christmas. I leaned back against the bar, letting the music pulse through my body. "Who?" I asked. "Allison." The way he said her name, it was like an unfinished sentence, something left hanging in the air. He told me the story in pieces, always after a few drinks, as if the details were too painful to say sober. She had been his everything. He was ready to marry her. Her family adored him. And then, out of nowhere, she walked away. Months later, he found out she was pregnant, not his. "She was seeing someone else," he said, voice raw. "The whole damn time, just didn't have the guts to admit it." I didn't question it. Why would I? Josh was my friend, and I'd seen how the mere mention of her name made something inside him darken. I didn't need more details. It was simple. She had betrayed him. That was the version I believed, the version I carried with me as we moved through those years of endless nights and reckless youth, never questioning that I already knew the truth. Until, much later, I realized I had only ever known half of it. A few months into my job, I saw her. It was in the break room of one of our partner offices, where I'd been sent for a routine client meeting. She was pouring coffee, unaware of my presence. Allison. I recognized her instantly. Josh had shown me a picture once, a faded Polaroid he kept tucked inside his wallet. Long brown hair, sharp blue eyes, the kind of face that lingers in a memory. She looked the same, yet different. Older? No, that wasn't it. More composed. A quiet weight behind her expression. Something that made me pause. For a second, I considered introducing myself. But what would I even say? "Hey, I'm Josh's friend, the one who knows how you ruined his life." So, I walked away. That evening, when I told Josh about the encounter, he stiffened. "You didn't talk to her, did you?" "No," I admitted. "Didn't see the point." "Good," he muttered. "She doesn't deserve your time." He rarely talked about her anymore, but when he did, there was always a bitterness in his voice, like an old wound reopening. "Her family loved me, you know," he continued, staring at his beer. "They wanted us to end up together, but she was always distant. Like she had one foot out the door the whole time." I nodded. It made sense, cold-hearted, detached. The kind of woman who could abandon someone without a second thought. I wanted to believe him, and yet, something about her face earlier that day, something unspoken in the way she carried herself, lingered in my mind. Like a crack in the surface of a story I had never thought to question. Years passed. Josh and I grew older, though not necessarily wiser. The nights of bar hopping became fewer, replaced by long talks over takeout and reminiscing about our reckless youth. Life moved forward in ways we never quite expected. For me, it was Graham. I met him at a networking event, clean-cut, confident, the kind of man who could debate contract law with the same ease that he made me laugh over bad wine. A lawyer, ambitious but grounded, sharp but never cruel. He saw the world in logic and reason, but there was warmth in him too. We fell fast, moved in together, got married. Josh, of course, had opinions. Guy's too serious, he teased at our wedding. You sure you want to settle down with someone who wears suits for fun? I rolled my eyes, but I knew what he meant. Graham was different from the men Josh and I used to admire in our early 20s, the ones who lived for spontaneity, who thrived on chaos. But that was exactly why I loved him. There was no unpredictability, no roller coaster of emotions, just stability. Life, for the first time, felt solid. Then came my career shift. A promotion landed me in a new department, leading a team on a major campaign. The work was fast-paced, exhilarating. But what I didn't expect, what I never could have predicted, was the woman sitting across from me in our first meeting. Allison. At first, it was uncomfortable. We were polite but distant, two people existing in the same space without acknowledging the invisible history between us. I never brought up Josh, neither did she, but over time something changed. She wasn't who I expected her to be. I had always imagined her as cold, indifferent, a woman who had carelessly shattered a man and walked away without looking back. But in reality, she was sharp, witty, kind, yet always carrying a certain heaviness in her eyes. It was in the way she listened, truly listened, when others spoke. The way she stayed late to help fix last-minute problems. The way she smiled, soft and a little hesitant, like she had learned not to expect kindness in return. Slowly, we became friends. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't forced. It just happened, like two people orbiting the same space long enough to realize they were never enemies to begin with. And then, one evening, over a casual post-work drink, she told me her side of the story. And everything I thought I knew shattered. It started with a single sentence. I never cheated on him. Allison said it so quietly, so steadily, that I almost didn't register the words. We were at a dimly lit bar near the office, half-empty glasses between us. It had been a long day, the kind that left people raw and open. Maybe that's why she said it. Or maybe she had just grown tired of carrying the weight of a story that wasn't hers. I stared at her. What? She exhaled, rolling the stem of her glass between her fingers. Josh told you I left him for someone else, didn't he? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Allison gave a small, humorless smile. I figured. That's what he does. He tells half the story and lets people fill in the rest, I wanted to argue, to defend my friend. But something in her expression, tired, resigned, kept me silent. She took a slow sip of wine before continuing. I stayed with Josh longer than I should have, she admitted, because I wanted to believe he could be better, that he could grow up. I frowned. This wasn't the version I knew. The version where she had been distant, emotionally checked out from the start. Allison shook her head as if reading my thoughts. That's not how it was. I loved him, but he wasn't safe. A strange chill ran through me. What do you mean? He was reckless, immature. He drank too much, partied too hard. He never listened, never cared about what I needed. If I got upset, he'd laugh it off. If I tried to talk about our problems, he'd kiss me until I forgot why I was angry. She looked down at her hands. It wasn't love. It was control, disguised as love. I swallowed hard. He was jealous, but not in the way that makes you feel wanted, in the way that makes you feel trapped, like I couldn't have male friends, couldn't even be polite to strangers without him making a comment, and if I ever pulled away, he'd guilt me, make me feel like I was the problem. I could hear Josh's voice in my head. She was always distant, or maybe she had just been afraid. I told him so many times that I needed more, that I needed him to grow up, but he never took me seriously. Her fingers tightened around her glass. So one day, I just left. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Why didn't you tell him? Allison's smile was bitter. Because he would have tried to convince me to stay, and I knew. If I gave him that chance, I might have. For a long moment, we just sat there. I felt something shift inside me, something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. I had spent years believing Josh's story, never questioning, never looking deeper. And now, hearing this, hearing her, I didn't know what to do with it. But one thing was clear. Josh wasn't the victim he had always made himself out to be, and Allison hadn't run away to someone else. she had just run for her life.